started here. Thanks everybody for coming. My name is Darin Hathaway. This is my son, Darin Hathaway. The name of my business is Hydronic Heating Specialists. That's all I do is specialize in the Aquahot heating system, and there are a couple other hydronic heating systems that manufacturers use, but that's all I work on, specialize in that. When I got certified in 2012 at Aquahot, I've been working on them though for about 13 years. And we are based here in Elkhart, Indiana. We do get around the country a little bit though as well. We do the Renegade rallies, some other rallies, but I go to Florida in the winter for a couple months and northern Michigan in the summer for about a month and go to the same place and take care of the same people every year. What we're going to be talking about today is the Aquahot system, of course, what it is, how it works, how to use it, how to maintain it, and what I do in annual maintenance. So basically I will go through, if this is okay, just a section at a time, and then I'll take questions on that section, and then we'll move on and kind of do that as we go, and of course take some questions at the end. So what you have in there is a boiler full of transfer fluid, which is antifreeze. It's propylene glycol boiler antifreeze, so it is very specific to the system. It's non-toxic. But that's what you're heating up. So no matter how you're heating it up, that's what you're heating up. You're not heating water. You have, depending on the model, roughly 5 gallons of boiler fluid sitting in that tank. And you have a couple different ways to heat that. One of them being the burner here, what's called a Wabasso burner. It's actually, what they use now is the same thing, but different name. But it's a diesel burner. And you also have an electric heating element in there that is screwed into the boiler fluid, so that again is what you're heating up, and you're not heating up water. It's just like a heating element that would be in your house water heater, except it again is heating up the fluid and not water. So it is very unlikely for that thing to corrode, for the fact that it's sitting in that burner fluid and there's not, there's rust inhibitors in that fluid to keep that from corroding. The burner will give you everything you need. The electric element is more of a maintainer, and I'm going to go into that here down the road a little bit. But overall, what you have when you turn on your hot water, you have your diesel burner running, the boiler's hot, you turn the faucet on, the water comes in the back of the Aquahot, goes through 30-foot of copper coil wound up inside that boiler, and as it's running through that copper, the hot transfer fluid is transferring the heat through that copper tubing, heating the water, setting it up to the coach. Pretty straightforward. It comes back out of the Aquahot before it does go to your faucet, runs through a mixing valve, and then up to your coach, to your faucet. When you call for heat, you have pumps that will activate once your Aquahot is hot enough to provide heat. You turn your furnace on, it will activate the pumps necessary to pump that transfer fluid out of the boiler, up through PEX tubing, through what are called heat exchangers, little radiators. And as it's shooting through that radiator, a fan blows across that transfer fluid, setting the heat out of your coach, then returns that fluid back down to the boiler to be reheated. Now, you will also have, in some cases, depending on which model you have, if you have a 450 or say a 600, 650, then you have what's called engine preheat / engine assist, which will, running down the road, your engine will heat your Aquahot. And the way that works is your water pump on your engine is moving the engine antifreeze up to your Aquahot through a separate copper coil, of course, inside there, and then back through your engine. So in that case, running down the road, your engine antifreeze, as it heats up from your engine, will go up to your Aquahot, transfer the heat out to the Aquahot boiler, heating that, and then, of course, back through your engine. Now, if you wanted to preheat your engine, you need the diesel burner on, the engine preheat switch on, and it'll activate a pump on the Aquahot. Once your boiler is hot enough to heat your engine, it will move that engine antifreeze, of course, up through the Aquahot, through your engine, and then back through your Aquahot. Like I said, going down the road, there's no need to turn any switches on or anything. Your engine water pump's doing all that work. If you want heat going down the road, you would just simply go to your thermostat, call for heat, and once your Aquahot's hot enough to provide that from your engine, it'll activate those pumps necessary. Any questions on that there? Okay, I must be doing all right. No questions. So that's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, that's what it is. Now how do you use it? What I tell people is, if you're plugged in, you're not worried about paying for the power, turn the electric on, leave it on all the time. Okay? What that's going to do, I describe it as a maintainer. It's going to maintain the heat in that boiler between, we're going to go overall here, okay? Because there are different thermostats, different models, different years. So it's going to maintain the heat in that boiler between 155 and 190, okay? So that will just activate as necessary, leave it on all the time, and it'll activate at, for the sake of argument, 155, and then it will shut that off at 190. And that's going to give you, wash your hands, do some dishes, hot water. You really can't expect a long hot shower off of that, or any heat to speak of. Now some people have different stories and they get what they need off that electric, and that's fine. But just to avoid any confusion, it's really not meant to give you a long hot shower, but more of a maintain that heat in the boiler, wash your hands, do some dishes. And then when you're going to jump in the shower, of course you just go hit the diesel switch as well, and then in that case I have them both on, and you're ready to jump in the shower. So there's not a lag time waiting for the burner to heat up that fluid, because your electric element has already kept that fluid up in that range. Yeah, just electric on all the time, turn the diesel burner on when you're going to shower, or if you need heat, you're going to need that burner on then. And the reason is the electric element, it's 1650 watt element, it just can't recover fast enough to give you that continuous hot water or heat. You may get a little bit, like I said, or wash your hands, do some dishes, but if you're drawing a lot of heat off that boiler, it just can't recover fast enough. So you get where you're going, you plug in, you push the electric, turn it on, and then the diesel as needed. Now you can, if you want to, turn them both on, leave them on all the time, and it won't be a problem at all. The only thing you will notice is every once in a while, the boiler will reach that 155, and it will activate whatever function is turned on at the time. So if you have both of them on, the control thermostat, that's what tells these functions to come on and go off, and at what temperature will activate whatever function is turned on. So if, like I said, you're not demanding any heat, not demanding any hot water, eventually the ambient temperature of that fluid will drop to a point where it will activate the burner and the electric if both switches are on. So you would hear that come on and cycle every once in a while, even if you're not demanding anything. And to the point of fuel consumption, I know Derek brought this up. So it's just 0.4 gallons for an hour of burn time. So just under half a gallon for an actual hour of burning. So it is very fuel efficient. But some people just don't want to hear it come on and off. So I would say leave the electric on all the time and then turn that burner on as needed. To that point, you do need to run the burner. So diesel gets gummy when it sits. The fuel nozzle on the tip of this burner here, it's a very specific spray pattern that comes out of that nozzle. Diesel, like I said, gets gummy. There's a stone filter on the back of that nozzle, and if it's not flowing through there on a regular basis, it will get gummed up on the tip of that nozzle or in that the fuel filter on the back, the stone filter, and then you may not get ignition. So, once a month at the least. I tell people, once a month if you're in it, once a week. Your Sunday shower, that's a good way to remember. Anybody? Sunday shower? Okay. A couple people out there. That's a good way to remember. And the more you use it, the better. So if you're in it, use it. If you're going to store the motorhome and you can't get to it, to do that, that's, that is what it is. If you can get to it once a month, go there. A lot of guys will cycle their generator about once a month. So same concept, just keep that diesel fluid moving. If you cannot get to it to do that, then my suggestion is to have it serviced when you're getting it out, to take it out on the road. That way you're starting off with a brand new nozzle, brand new filter, and you're going to be good to go, and you're going to know that nozzle is not clogged up. I'll have people call me and say, hey, you serviced this 5 months ago, I haven't used it once, now I'm trying it and it's not working. I said, well, that's because you haven't used it for 5 months. So, just pretty common for that to happen, so just a reason to keep using it. Something else you want to do is check the overflow tank. I tell people check it once a month, the reason being that you will go through some fluid over time. It's a closed system, quote unquote, but you do have an overflow hose that comes out of that overflow tank, so you will get some evaporation over time. It's good to have on hand what you need. And if you spring a leak, then you're going to know it sooner because you're checking it on a regular basis. And you'll know what you go through on a regular basis, which is not a whole lot, but it does vary, of course. And the way to check that level, and the only way to check that level, is to cycle it on diesel with the diesel burner. When it shuts down, that's when you check the level to the hot line. Okay? The reason is that fluid expands when it heats, it contracts when it cools. So right after the cycle, that fluid has expanded as far as it's going to expand. So you're going to get an accurate reading, and you check that to the hot line on that overflow tank right after it cycles, and then that's when you top it off as well. So the overflow tank's not under pressure, nothing to be concerned about there. But right after you cycle up diesel, you're exercising it for one, and then you're checking that level, and you're going to get an accurate reading. And now, other than the 250s, if it's a 400 or 450, you really don't have to worry about the cold line at all. Okay? I've seen those tanks completely empty, cycle it on diesel, it's at the hot line. Now, the 250s have the float switch fluid level sensor in the overflow tank right around the cold line. So you do need to keep those above the cold line, which is fine. The reason I say to check it the same way every time and do that is, I'll see people will see nothing in that tank or say it's below the cold line. You panic, you add some in there, then you turn it on and it's expanding and it pushes it out the overflow hose under the ground and you're wasting fluid and it's not cheap. So just a good idea to do that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, do you see the percentage concentration of the glycol change over time, especially when it comes to evaporation?
Yes, you do, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more later, but it does change over time, and I check it every time I do a service. Sometimes I will see it heavy on glycol, sometimes light, and but you do have a tendency to evaporate the water off faster than the transfer fluid. So as far as use, that's the main thing. Just use it. Use that burner often, and keep an eye on your overflow tank. Any questions on that at all? All right. Okay, we got one.
Yeah, what causes the fluid to discolor?
I don't know what causes it to discolor. I know that it does discolor, and even if you change the fluid out, eventually it's going to get dark. I've heard that maybe it's air, contact with air. I'm not really sure what makes it discolor, but I can tell you that it will discolor, whether it be the yellow, which I'm sure all of you probably have, the vast majority, or the pink. They both get darker over time. Now, Aquahot says, it's okay to mix the pink and the yellow, and that's fine. I suggest to try to stick with the color that you have in it. And the reason being is, once the colors start to get mixed, then if we think there's an issue, I'm not going to be able to tell as easy what was in it to begin with. Although they are both the same brand, so that's fine to mix those. Now, you don't want to mix anything else in there. The only two brands, as far as I know, and Derek may school me on this, but that you want to use in there is Century. So that's what all the manufacturers are using now. Also, there's a product out there called Camco, which really won't affect you guys because you're really going to have the yellow. That was an older brand. I don't think they're making it anymore, but I do see it from time to time, and that's a pink solution. So the main thing is stick with the same color, if at all possible, and the same brand is the main thing. Again, it's propylene glycol boiler antifreeze as opposed to ethylene glycol, which goes in your engine. Did that answer the question? Well, I guess it didn't because I don't know. So we didn't answer his question. But I did say that I don't know the answer, and I don't. So I'm just being honest about the situation. Yes, sir.
All right, what causes it to get dirty? The tank.
Yeah, again, that was kind of his question, and I don't have an answer to why it does discolor or get dark. Sorry? No, I mean, from what I have been told from Aquahot, it's not going to hurt anything. So the main thing to keep in mind there is as long as the mixture is good and the pH is good, you're fine. There's not a need for a flush and fill cycle like a 5-year or anything like that. And as long as you haven't mixed the wrong stuff in, there's really not a reason for that. So as long as you've been sticking with the same product, it will discolor. and we'll check the mixture every year and make sure that that's good to go. Yeah, back behind. He'll take care of it.
Is there a maintenance cycle on the electrical element?
Good question. There's not a maintenance cycle on the electric element. There's really nothing to do to that. It's like that element that was in your house. It's in your house water heater. So there's not a reason to exercise it necessarily or do anything with it. I can tell you that I've changed 2 heating elements in about 13 years. So it's very rarely an issue then, as opposed to something else in the circuit, so to speak. So, and the reason again why is because it's sitting in that transfer fluid that has rust inhibitors, so it doesn't corrode it like sitting in water would. Yes, sir.
Are you going to talk a little bit later about the mixing valves and that kind of stuff? Or?
I really don't get into the mixing valve. If you have a question, I will answer it.
Sure. We have the 250D,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm curious where the mixing valve is on that, and oftentimes go to our Facebook blogs to get help at times. Sometimes it talks about just cycling that if you're having issues, and so part of that question is, does scale build up in that since it's a hot, cold mixture? Is it a plastic valve? Is it a metal valve? Those kind of things.
Yeah, no, you can get calcium built up in there. As far as if you're having issues cycling it, depends on what your issue is. And some people say, I know Mark Davis, when he gives us, he tells people to open it, close it, put it back to the factory, every once in a while, and that's fine. That's not something I do in a service. As far as where it's located on the 250, you take that cover off, and it's on the left-hand side on the wall. You see the water lines coming down in, and then you'll see it in line with those water lines. So a lot of you have, the water filtration systems and what. I rarely see that scaling cause a problem, although it can, So if you want to move it around every once in a while, that's fine. Just always put it back to factory setting. The thing to keep in mind with that is, if you do adjust it, if you turn it, you want more hot water, okay? If you open it for more hot water, you're going to have hotter water, but you won't have hotter water longer, because you're sending more hot water through there than the system's really set up to provide. So if you think you have an issue and I'm just going to open this mixing valve, it's not really going to fix your issue. Maybe a Band-Aid for a minute, but if you have a lack of hot water, it's usually another component. Yes, sir.
Is it necessary to purge the tank with the air release valve before you refill?
Well, if you empty the whole unit and you refill it, then you would want to do that, yes.
But not on a routine basis?
No, not unless for some reason air had been introduced into the system. Or if the saline fluid got too low. What can happen, I see this happen, is sometimes in the factory they don't fill all of the heat loops completely with the fluid, and then when you use that heat for the first time, you'll burp the air down and out. It will replace the air with fluid, and then the level will drop in the Aquahot. But again, if you're keeping an eye on it once a month, and you're keeping that topped off, then there's really not a reason to do that. If you were to lose some fluid for whatever reason, or if the tank is completely empty, after you cycle it, then you would want to do that. And there is a Schrader valve on top of the Aquahot to bleed that. And you would want the diesel burner running, heating it up while you're pushing that valve, pushing the air out. And once you have all the fluid, just fluid coming out, no air, then you know you have the air out. Any other questions on that? Okay. Go ahead and move along to a service and annual maintenance. What the basic maintenance is, and we talk about what we do in annual maintenance. The main thing is a fuel nozzle every year, once a year, and there's reasons for doing this, whether you use it a lot or whether you use it a little. And I'll go into that a little bit too. The main service is fuel nozzle. Every year, new one of those, new fuel filter, and then you pull out what's called the swirler, and clean all the carbon off of this and out of the burn chamber as well. If you use the Aquahot like you're supposed to, use that burner like you're supposed to, that nozzle eventually is going to start to wear. The spray, it's a very specific spray pattern that comes out of there, so it's good to get a new nozzle every year. It's not a cleanable part, and it's fairly inexpensive, $20-some. So Once a year, new nozzle. Now, if you're not using it, like I was talking earlier, that needs to get gummed up on the tip of that nozzle or in the back on the stone filter. So that's a good reason to do it once a year as well. Now, if you're using it as you should, then you're going to get carbon built up on this swirler here. Carbon holds in heat, so the longer that goes and without being cleaned, the carbon builds up, insulates the heat, gets hotter and hotter. Eventually this will start to warp between, I don't know if you can see it from back there, now it's two pieces, but the swirler will warp away from the housing, and that will cause issues. So this is a very important component. It doesn't look too technical, but the disc on the tip of the burner here seals up against the inner circle on the swirler, sending the air around the outside and through slots on the back that twist that flame into a spiral. Of course, it is a diesel burner, so it's going to get dirty. So that's another reason to do that once a year. Again, new nozzle, new fuel filter, because it's a filter, right? And clean up the carbon off the swirler and or the burn chamber. I don't know, some of you, I kind of doubt it, but this is an older version of that. And what they did was they changed the interior of the burn chamber. When they used to use this tube, it had fins in there, and you get in there and scrub it out and vacuum it out. They changed the interior to a smooth burn chamber and got rid of the tube. And then that's what you have right now in there. So most of you are going to have this.
Can you give any more detail on how to clean it?
On how to clean it, we clean it with a drill and wire brushes. So no chemicals or anything like that, just wire drill, some different wire brushes to get in all the cracks and crevices. Now, does anyone like to do their own service? Okay, we got a few here. Okay, so I'm going to say you can pay me to do it one time, and I'll show you how to not screw it up. But there are different little things that I'm not going to get into here because it's just too, it's in the weeds a little bit. But there are some, definitely some things that you want to do and not do. Talking, to that point. If I do a service for you, I want you to watch. I encourage you to watch. It costs more if you don't watch. Okay, you can't help, but you got to watch. You don't really have to watch, but I do want you there. Okay, no matter what. And the reason being is, if I hear something or see something, I want you to hear it and see it as well, and then we can discuss, how we want to proceed and what we want to do to fix the problem. But I do want you there. And when I show up, it's always nice if you shut the burner and the electric off, a little earlier to cool it down. I can work on it hot, and that's fine. And honestly, I don't want you to inconvenience yourself at all. But it's always nice. But when I get there, I'm going to ask you, how's it running? Plenty of heat, plenty of hot water, and that's a good time to say, well, I'm not sure about this or I'm not sure about that, and then we can discuss that, and I can think about that and look into that as I'm going through this service. So if it's not off, that's the first thing I'm going to ask you to do. Let's shut this down. Take the cover off. Pull what's called the control box, which I don't have an example of here, but it's slid on the side of your diesel burner. You're going to pull that box off. What that is the brains of your burner. It tells it what to do and what order to do it and when to do it. So I'm going to remove that and put my test box on there. So I can run every function of the burner with this individually. So I'm going to turn the motor on, listen to it run. And you can tell a lot about the way they sound, a lot about what's going on inside there. So it's a very specific sound that I'm listening for. It's basically a little jet engine. Shoots an air down a chamber, you get ignition, you get a flame shoot down that tube. So there's a specific sound I'm listening for. And then I got control of the fuel solenoid ignition coil, so I'm going to fire it up. There's also a light on here that shows me the flame so I can kind of see what's going on in there. Again, listening to that. And just making sure I get ignition. I'm going to shut that off, pull the burner out, and what I'm looking for is, as I'm pulling that out, I'm looking at your grommets, which are little rubber grommets here. There's two on the bottom of the fuel lines and two on the top. Around the wire harnesses, those need to be pliable. They're rubber. They get hard over time just from the heat, so they start to turn to plastic, and then you will start to lose air where you don't want to lose air. So just making sure those are pliable. And then also the photo disc on top here, this one's all bent up as it should not be. So you need that thing to be flat. That's a movable part. And then you make sure that it's floppy like that as well. And as I was explaining, that part seals up against the inside of the swirler. to send the air where it needs to go. So it's important that that be flat and movable. And if it's not, that's what we discussed. And that will get worn over time as well. It starts to get convex, just from usage from the air hitting it and it sealing up. But I'm going to clean that up, scrape that up a little bit. Your flame sensor is in that disc as well. So I want to make sure that that's clean and clear. Your igniters, which are up here, they're actually in that disc as well. But you have your igniters here, they're about 1/4 inch apart. And we're going to clean those up. Those get carved up as well. Make sure that they're sharp so it jumps from point to point. They start to get rounded over time. So you want to make sure that those are cleaned up. And I'm going to take the nozzle off, and I got a fuel pressure tester here. I'm going to put this where the nozzle goes, and I'm going to check the fuel pressure. 145 PSI is right on the money. Plus or minus 5 is okay. But I want to make sure that that fuel pressure is where it belongs before I leave. Now there's an adjustment screw on the side of the fuel pump here that I can adjust that with. And the reason I do that is I take care of a lot of the same guys every year. And I will dial it to 145 PSI. I'll get back next year and it's high or it's low. And I will adjust it back then, of course. Now the reason it's high or low, I don't know. I don't have a good answer. I'm not much of a speculator. But I know that it doesn't, and I know that fuel to air ratio is very important as far as the cleanliness and the efficiency of that burn. So I want to make sure when I walk away that that's where it's supposed to be. Of course, your air intake is on the bottom of the burner housing here, and we're going to check that too, make sure that that's where it needs to be. It comes factory set, and of course that can affect how clean it burns as well. Something I hear quite a bit, if I do hear this, it really stinks, or we got some smoke, and 9 times out of 10 when I get done with the service, if that the fuel pressure's out of whack one way or another, the service will help dampen that smell down. It is a diesel burner, you're going to get some smell, but it usually does help that out. So check your fuel pressure. Me and David work on these together, so we can kind of hammer through them. So he's changing the filter or cleaning up the swirler, and I'm doing so. So you got to decide who you want to follow around. I personally think that I'm a little more interesting, but David's a pretty good guy too. He's pretty entertaining as well. But sometimes he'll be doing the service and I'll be doing the filter and stuff too. But again, while he's doing that, I'm doing something else. We're going to change that filter. We're going to put this back in. Of course, put a new nozzle in here. Check the gap on your igniters, and that's something that you guys that do it yourself are going to want to do every time you do it. And you will have a gapping tool actually on the side of your diesel burner here that you can just take off and use that after you're done doing that. Put the burner back in, put my test box back on it, turn the motor on, I'm moving the fuel. So when the motor's running, what's happening is air is shooting down through this hole on this housing here and out through your exhaust. And the fuel is also moving from your tank up to the Aquahot back to your tank. And I'm just running that motor for a minute while I'm doing a couple other things to make sure all the air is out of the system. To that point, of course, when we change the filter, we always fill it with fuel so you avoid any air locks or any issues with that. But what little air may be in there, I'm running that motor, clearing that out. Then I'm going to fire it up and listen to it again and watch it with my box, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. We got this refractometer, so we're going to get some fluid either out of your overflow tank or out of the boiler drain and put someone here and test that antifreeze mixture for you and make sure it's where we want it. So 44% is right on the money. Okay, that's what I was taught years ago. That's where you get the best performance of heat. Of course, there is a variable range, it's 30 to 50, somewhere in there, and you're fine. So 9 times out of 10, it's out one way or another a little bit, and that's fine until you get out to a certain percentage, then you will start noticing issues. So when I check this every year, I just want to tell you, okay, you're light on glycol. Okay, so let's add some concentrate the next several times you add it. Or you're heavy on glycol, okay, so just add distilled water, next time or two. And we'll check it next year when we get back. So we're just aiming for that 44%, because again, that's where you get the best transference of heat from that fluid. And then I'm going to have you go inside. I'm going to put your control locks back on there, have you go inside, turn the burner and the electric on, and I want to hear that thing come on and ignite and do what it's supposed to do before I walk away. Now, the normal cycle for this, and you may have heard this or noticed the differences, but when you turn it on, you'll hear the motor come on. And like I said, when that motor's running, it's air going down through the chamber, the cycle of fuel for about 15 seconds, then you get ignition, and you'll hear that, you hear that ignition, and that will run until that control thermostat is satisfied, that we were talking about earlier, up to 190 degrees, and it will shut the burn cycle down, but it will continue to run a purge cycle for another 3 minutes, and then shut all the way down. So that's normal operation, okay? And if you're hearing something different than that, then that can be an issue. So like I said, I'm going to have you turn it on so I can hear it come on and ignite. And then I've got what's called a tail light guarantee. So when I drive away, that's it. Not true either. No, I do want to hear that, but I want to hear it so I know when I did walk away that it's good to go. But I will take your phone call anytime and help you out over the phone, or if you have a question, of course. But I want to hear that thing do what it's supposed to before I walk away. I do want to talk about this a little bit. I don't have an example of the current, the latest reporter. It's called a control panel here, and some of you guys will have this, a lot of you probably. But there's some good lights on here, good troubleshooting lights. And to the point of me helping you out on the phone, if you call me, this is probably where I'm going to send you, okay? There's some good stuff on here. You have your pump 3, 2, 1 and engine preheat pump lights over here on the left. Oh, I'm sorry, that would be the right. And red is bad, red's a bad pump. Green is good, although you can have a bad pump with a green light. So a red light is an electrical failure. If you have a green light and you still have a bad pump, that would be a mechanical issue in the pump. But always green lights are good. Diesel burner status on the bottom right, that is saying that your switch is turned on, and that's all it's saying. Electric heating element status on the top left, that's saying the electric switch is turned on, and that's all that's saying. Heating status, that is talking to your control thermostat, or I should say your control thermostat is talking to that. Now, if your control thermostat is closed, that light will be green. Okay, that means it's calling for heat. So anytime your diesel burner switch is turned on and that heating status light is lit, your burner should be burning. Okay, and that one there is a big one for me to help you over the phone. So that's where I would send you most likely right off the bat to see whether that's turned on or off, if your Aquahot is hot or cold, and that sort of thing. So heating status is a good one. Low tank level cutoff, that would be a red light. That means your fluid did actually get too low. There's a fluid level sensor in the boiler, and again, unless it's a 250, that's in the overflow tank. So if that's a red light, that means your fluid is either too low or you have a bad flow switch. Again, in that case, just call me and can figure out what's going on and how we can get around that, until we get you fixed. Low battery voltage fault. That would be a red light that's in the bottom center. That means if your batteries have dropped down 10.5, 11 volts somewhere in there, they will trip that, and that light will come on, and that is resettable. There is a reset button in the top center. There's a hole. It's a PC board in here. There's a little button on that PC board, and you stick a toothpick in there and push that button. The red light will go out, and your burner will work again. So some people, when they store their coach, they shut the cutoffs off, and that will trip that light as well. And in a lot of cases, that the burner switch will reset that, but not always. So you just it's a good idea to know where that's at. You do have your heating zone status over here on the left side, and those will tell you what zone is calling for heat from your thermostat. Your thermostat's calling for heat. Now, highly unreliable as far as adding up to zone 1 in your coach, zone 1 on here. It's whatever they did that day, however they wired that day. Now it can be a good thing for troubleshooting overall, but a lot of times, say, well, zone 1's turned on in here, but it'll be zone 5 on the board. So they don't always correlate, but just something to talk about if you have an issue with the heating zone. That's where I would send you. Any questions on any of that? Control panel, the service, anything at all we've talked about today?
The newer controllers are LED screens, right?
Yeah, it's called a reporter, and it is a touch screen. It does give you some more information. There's other things that you can do in there. So I can walk you through stuff on that as well. But it will actually show you a fault on there. It's not always specific. It will say burner fault or overheat, and then we got to figure out why. It doesn't necessarily lead you right to it, but it will give you a direction to go. Yeah, and you can run stuff manually with that recorder as well for diagnostics purposes and that sort of thing. All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have a Firefly, you can get into the settings and you can go into the diagnostics of that, and that'll tell you a lot of the different things that they're on and working and stuff like that. So
That's the manufacturer side of things, but I know that they are doing that, so that you can see that stuff right from inside your coach.
Any other questions?
We got one right up here.
Yeah, when you run out of fuel, you get low enough in your main tank that it shuts down, they'll always restart usually?
Usually, I suggest if you're near a quarter tank, don't try to run your burner until you get some fuel. And if there's not a sensor on there that says, hey, I don't have enough fuel, it just will suck air in there, and then of course the burner's going to go out. And normally it will restart eventually. It'll probably fail a few times as it's working that air out, but I have seen it where it doesn't pick that fuel back up. There's an air lock in there, and then it can turn into a real nightmare to get that primed again. So if you can avoid it at all, again, that drop comes factory set from the manufacturer, usually right around a quarter tank. So if you're getting near there, you're best not to use that burner until you get some fuel. Good question. Any other questions? All right. I think this went pretty well. All right. So I had a sign-up sheet out here. If you want to sign up for service, there's a sign-up sheet right down here. Also, I do have business cards and stickers that you can stick on there, so you can't lose it, of my name and number. And again, if you don't need anything today, that's fine. But I would encourage you to please take a business card and or a sticker. That way, if you're down the road and you have a question or you have an issue, I do answer the phone, or I will call you back as soon as possible, and I help a lot of people over the phone. I can give you an idea of what's going on. That way you're not paying someone to push a button for you, right? Or if you have an issue, I may be able to help, diagnose that over the phone so you kind of know what you're getting into when you get into it. Again, please pick up that decal and or card. And if we have no more questions,